Hi everyone from Atlanta again. This is Stephanie Johnson, and I'm going to talk to you today about a disruption in the newspaper industry, a subject that I know a little bit about, and the disruption in the industry that was caused by social media. I found this cartoon. I thought you would appreciate it, about the Pulitzer Prize for investigative tweeting. I thought you'd appreciate that. It's from the Scranton paper, so I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I got a real chuckle out of it. But just to say that I think tweeting won't replace newspapers anytime soon. I think the death of newspapers has been greatly exaggerated. They've survived radio and television, and each time they were pronounced dead. They're struggling to adapt to social media, mainly because they lost a good bit of the profit margin that they had in the 80s and 90s. But frankly, that was an obscene profit margin by most business standards. So I think they're trying to figure that out and come to terms with it. And what does that mean? Well, I guess we're trying to figure that out. One of the things that you've probably seen is articles like this about the Chicago Sun-Times laying off all of its photographers, and they're going to rely on citizen journalists to submit the photos, which many of us found real interesting. One of the things I just want to point out is one of the photographers they laid off was a Pulitzer Prize winning photographer, John White, and John did his interview from the Billy Goat Tavern. If you've ever been to Chicago, by the way, you need to go there. This is near the Wrigley building, near the Sun-Times, and it was the basis of a very famous Saturday Night Live skit, and it's where all the journalists in Chicago hang out, and it's very famous. You should go there. But if I got laid off at the Sun-Times, that's where I'd be too. So it just was intriguing to me that he did his interview from Billy Goat's Tavern. But anyway, yeah, laying off all the photographers and going to use citizen journalists. So it's an interesting time in the newspaper world. In my own circle of friends, and my husband and I have both been in the newspaper industry, and we knew a lot of people in the newspaper industry, but most of our friends are no longer in journalism. But I have two still out there. One is Valerie Berline, who works for the Wall Street Journal, and she used to cover Coke here in Atlanta. She's now working out in North Carolina. And and then I have a friend, Aaron Sheenan, who works here for the Atlanta paper, covers state agencies. What's interesting about Aaron is that he's fully using all the different social media platforms and frequently goes to Twitter to say, I need to interview somebody about XYZ, could you please get back with me? So Aaron uses that a lot to help with what he's doing. Anyway, I really like some of the ways that Aaron's using social media. So in all my big circle of friends, I have two who are still in the newspaper business. So what does that mean? Well, it just means things are changing and that things are different. My first newspaper job, we had manual typewriters, and frankly, I'm not that ancient. Don't laugh. And by the time I left, we had computers. Things changed at a very rapid pace while I was there, and they're continuing to change very rapidly. Emily wrote on her post this week that she couldn't remember the last time she opened a real newspaper. And that's true for a lot of us, Emily. In this house, with two newspaper journalism degrees hanging on the wall, we don't have a subscription to a newspaper anymore because we read our news in other ways and on other platforms. So what does that mean for newspapers, and what does that mean for my friend Aaron and Valerie? Well, as far as I can tell, there's benefits and drawbacks to the newspaper industry for social media, and they're beginning to figure that out. So everyone's really excited about citizen journalists because we can get out there. Everybody can print their own content, right? We talked about that in Content Nation. But sometimes that information lacks validity. Sometimes it's just flat not true. Like the information about Obama and whether or not he's a Muslim that one of the other classmates posted in the Pew Center and their information about that. We do have rapid access to events now through social media, but sometimes that quickness um, is overshadowed by accuracy. Sometimes what we get isn't right. Our news can be very customized to our interests and our desires, but it tends to only shore up what we already believe, and we're not exposed to opposing viewpoints. We don't stray off and read that opposing viewpoint or editorial. If everyone is a journalist, no one is a journalist, and we've lost that professionalism. The code of ethics that I used to adhere to as a reporter isn't out there for a citizen journalist who knows nothing of it. We have global audiences for sure, and we're connected with people all over the world, but we're not connected to the people right next door or down the street, and that's one of the issues we have, I think, with our failing weekly newspapers. I have an aunt who lives in Dallas, Texas, who still subscribes to a small weekly newspaper in our hometown in Georgia. It's a small town in northwest Georgia, and she's done that for decades. Um, do you do that? I certainly don't, and I think that has a lot to do with the state of weekly newspapers today and the state of our local communities. Yes, we have citizen watchdogs, and frankly, that's nice to see watchdogs come back. But watchdogs like Watergate, are they going to be around to help us out? Who knows? And it also leads to these cyberbullies, these anonymous people who just beat up on people without cause. So there are definite benefits and drawbacks of social media versus newspapers. So what was one of the problems with the way the media has, or its newspapers in particular, approached social media was that they approached it as a profit center, and that just didn't work out. And I remember back in the mid 90s, and I want to show you something here if I can, that my husband tried very hard to take on and to create a website for social media for the Susan Smith trial. If you remember, Susan Smith was a woman who killed her 2 children in South Carolina, and in South Carolina they were going to do a website at the state newspaper. It's the first time they'd ever had a website, but they were going to launch it in conjunction with the trial for Susan Smith. And they had a robust conversation, I would say, about how they were going to, what they were going to post. But after that, it turned to how could they make money off that website, and how could they sell advertising, and how could they make that survive. And so first they lost off out of the newspaper itself. They lost classified advertising, and then they lost the car ads, and then after that went real estate. And that really hurt the newspaper when they lost all of those profit centers. So with those things in mind, that was when they knew they were in trouble. So they began, instead of looking at it as a profit center, they began looking at it about a way to reconnect with readers. And while some newspapers give some content for free and then sell the rest of the content, that approach seems to be working better. The Washington Post, for example, has an app that has become very popular. They have about 5 million people who've downloaded it now, and so they're looking at using social media as a way to reconnect with readers. And that approach seems to be much better than just profit-centered or profit-focused. So Content Nation says anyone can publish, and while I agree with that, I do think that we have not lost an important role for newspapers in our society today. But I do see that they're trying to change, and just like the rest of us, trying to cope with what social media has wrought upon us. And as the authors in Groundswell said, we can't stop it, so we need to try to understand it. And at DePauw University, they have courses now on how to edit information and how to verify information coming in from citizen journalists. And I think that that's a sign that we've got to figure out how to deal with this information and how to verify that, just like we did information coming in from reporters that we had to fact check. So we're coping and we're adjusting, and I think that it's going to work. And so we can't stop it, so we're trying to understand it. And like we moved from manual typewriters to computers, I think that that there'll be a bright future for newspapers, and they'll figure out how to work with social media. So, thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you in a week.